Welcome to the Deep Dive. We dig into interesting sources, pull out the key insights, and help you get informed fast. Today, we're diving into the property market in Phuket. And let's get this right, it's Phuket.
Yes, Phuket. Definitely not Phuket. We'll be sticking to Phuket.
Yeah. Our main source today is an article titled Phuket Real Estate Forecasts, Trends, and Market Resilience. And it comes from a group with real, on-the-ground experience. Ocean Worldwide, they're a luxury residential agency based right there in Phuket since, 2004.
That's right. Their director, Sandra O'Neill, has been working in this luxury market for over 2 decades, helping families, investors, in Phuket, Koh Samui. So this article really reflects that deep, long-term perspective.
So our mission here is to unpack their view, what's happening now, what are the challenges, and where does the resilience come from in the Phuket property scene? The article paints a picture of, big changes recently. Prices have shot up, there's construction everywhere. And the big question, especially if you're thinking of buying, is what's next? Is this sustainable? Let's see what Ocean Worldwide thinks.
Well, the first thing that jumps out from their analysis is, the rising prices.
Yeah.
Especially in the really popular areas.
Okay.
And it's not just land. The cost of building materials, labor, that's all gone up too. So developers feel the squeeze, and that gets passed on to buyers.
So more expensive all around. And you mentioned lots of building. The article highlights that too, right?
Oh, definitely. They actually call it manic construction activity. Arguably the busiest building period they'd seen in maybe 20 years.
Wow, manic.
Yeah. And naturally, that much building raises questions about, potential oversupply. Is the demand actually there to soak up all these new properties?
Right. If you build it, will they come?
Exactly. If demand doesn't keep pace, well, that imbalance could mean prices need to adjust or places just sit empty for longer.
So a classic supply and demand situation developing. Have we seen that impact sales recently?
Actually, yes. The article says the market was noticeably slower in the first half of 2025.
Slower. Okay.
Yeah. And they think it's a mix of things, maybe some overdevelopment fears. The higher prices definitely play a role. But interestingly, they even mention things like increased traffic jams.
So the practicalities of living there are starting to bite a bit.
Seems like it could be a factor for some buyers, yeah. So all that building energy hasn't quite translated into crazy sales numbers this year, according to them.
And this leads into their discussion of a market correction. How do they talk about that? Is it doom and gloom?
No, not really. They
Yeah.
frame it more as a likely adjustment, a normal part of the cycle, not a crash.
Like the market catching its breath.
Sort of. They even compare it to a retailer having a sale if you've got too much stock. You adjust prices to clear it. It's presented as a potential recalibration.
Okay, so if things slow down, properties might take longer to sell.
Right. And that could push developers to get creative, offer incentives, maybe furniture packages, rental guarantees, or just adjust the asking price.
Which could mean opportunities for buyers who are paying attention.
That's exactly what the source suggests. For savvy buyers, a correction period can actually be a good time to find value. And what's really interesting is how Ocean Worldwide consistently frames this not as a fundamental weakness, but as a cyclical thing within a market that's actually quite stable underneath. That perspective is key.
Okay, so high prices, loads of construction, a bit of a slowdown, maybe a correction coming. But what about the wider world? Global economics, regulations, how does that fit in?
Right, global factors always matter. But Phuket is interesting because it seems somewhat insulated from certain pressures.
How so?
Well, it's less vulnerable to things like credit crunches or sharp interest rate rises because a huge chunk of deals are done in cash.
Cash buyers.
Exactly. You've got high net worth people, international buyers. Many can't even get a Thai mortgage easily, so their ability to buy isn't directly tied to local bank lending in the way it might be elsewhere.
So if lending tightens globally, Phuket doesn't necessarily grind to a halt.
It seems less likely to, based on this analysis. In fact, sometimes global uncertainty can actually drive more investment towards places seen as safe havens.
Like Phuket.
Potentially. They point to the surge in Russian investment after the Ukraine conflict started as an example, people looking for stable places for their assets. That said, they do acknowledge the broader Thai economy is expected to be a bit sluggish, which is, another factor, though, maybe less critical for the luxury segment they focus on.
What about rules affecting foreigners directly, like taxes or tariffs?
That's definitely an area of uncertainty they flag. There's some talk about potential U.S. tariffs on Thailand, which could indirectly affect government spending on things like infrastructure, which is important for Phuket's appeal.
Okay, indirect effects. Anything more direct for buyers?
Yes, the bigger concern seems to be around the legal side of foreigners owning property, especially villas with land.
Right, Thai law restricts foreigners owning land directly, doesn't it?
It does. The traditional workaround involved using Thai company structures. But according to the article, that's become much more complex, more expensive, and the authorities have been enforcing the rules more strictly since around 2024.
So what used to be standard practice is now trickier?
Definitely more complicated, carrying more perceived risk. Plus, there's ongoing talk about maybe introducing a 99-year lease model for foreign land ownership.
That sounds like it could help clarify things.
It could, if it actually happens and provides real security. But the source points out similar ideas have been floated before and didn't become law. So it creates a bit of a wait-and-see attitude for some buyers interested in villas.
That legal gray area sounds like a hurdle. Yet, the article keeps stressing Phuket's resilience. It even held up during the global financial crisis, apparently.
Yeah, that's a key point they make. While many markets crashed back then, prices in Phuket apparently rose.
Wow. Why?
They put it down to those core drivers.
Mm-hmm.
It's heavily linked to tourism, lots of cash buyers, international money flowing in, and crucially, it's driven by lifestyle.
Lifestyle investment, meaning...
People aren't just buying purely for financial speculation. They're buying a holiday home, a place to retire, somewhere to relocate. They want to use the property.
So they're less likely to panic sell if the market dips for a bit.
Exactly. That lifestyle demand creates a kind of baseline stability that's less affected by short-term financial market jitters.
Which really brings up the central question. You've got these external pressures, global economy, the legal stuff. How do they really stack up against these unique internal strengths of Phuket? Does that resilience truly hold?
That tension does seem key. Let's go back to the development you mentioned, that manic construction. What does that actually look like?
Well, it's apparently visible all over the island. And the source does question if sales are really keeping up with that pace, maybe hinting at a touch of irrational exuberance building, getting ahead of realistic short-term demand.
Any specific areas they mention? Yeah, places like Chung Tale near Bang Tao Beach are highlighted as being particularly active. They mention specific new developments too, like Sudara residences, aimed at that lifestyle buyer segment.
Okay, so building is booming, but sales might be lagging a bit behind that pace currently.
That's the potential imbalance they note. But they're also careful to point out this development isn't just random sprawl. It's part of a bigger transformation of Phuket.
Transformation how?
It's shifting from just a holiday island to a more sophisticated hub. They talk about major infrastructure, upgrades to the airport expansion, better roads, improved internet, top-notch hospitals, international schools, modern shopping malls.
Right.
The source even argues this infrastructure puts Phuket years ahead of most regional competitors.
That makes a huge difference if you're thinking of living there, not just visiting for 2 weeks.
Absolutely. It attracts a different kind of buyer, reinforces that lifestyle appeal. Of course, it also feeds into concerns about rising costs and maybe overdevelopment. It's presented as this ongoing evolution.
The article also mentioned a post-COVID demand surge. A coiled spring.
Yeah, that was their phrase for the pent-up demand released when travel finally opened up again. People who'd been waiting suddenly rushed in, causing a big spike in activity.
Was that just a temporary blip, or do they see signs it might last?
Well, the initial intensity has leveled off, naturally. But they argue there are reasons for sustained interest. Things like more people working remotely, looking for a better quality of life, the appeal of the beaches, combined with that improved infrastructure.
Makes sense.
So the message is, the market isn't just built on hype. It's supported by, quote, real factors like tourism and infrastructure, giving it a solid base.
Okay, let's unpack this then. So even with the recent slowdown in all this building, the core idea from Ocean Worldwide is that these underlying strengths keep Phuket fundamentally stable for the long haul.
Exactly. They really hammer home a few key strengths. First, that lifestyle investment aspect we talked about.
People buying for personal use.
Right. Holiday homes, retirement plans, relocation. These buyers are less flaky. They want their piece of paradise.
Yeah.
And are less driven by short-term market swings.
Okay, what else?
Second, the growth of branded residential properties. Think developments tied to big hotel names like Banyan Tree, Intercontinental, The Standard.
Ah, yes.
These offer high-end facilities, professional management, often a focus on wellness or sustainability. The source said these made up something like 17% of supply back in May 2025. They appeal strongly to international buyers seeking quality and convenience.
Got it. And the third big one.
Is back to the money, the low-leverage, cash-based nature of so many deals.
Right. The cash buyers again.
It's crucial. It insulates the market from the kind of domino effect you see in crashes fueled by bad loans. When things slow down in Phuket, you're more likely to see stagnation or sellers slowly adjusting prices rather than waves of foreclosures forcing prices down dramatically.
So stability rather than volatility.
That's the argument. They believe this characteristic has created a very stable real estate sector over the last few decades, helping it ride out storms like the GFC. And connecting that to the bigger picture, these aren't just minor points. They argue these factors fundamentally make Phuket different from purely speculative markets. It explains why they foresee a potential correction as an adjustment, not some kind of catastrophic collapse.
That distinction feels really important, but navigating those legal issues around buying a villa still sounds tricky for foreigners.
Oh, it absolutely is a factor, and the source is upfront about the unease it's causing, especially for people who dream of owning a house with land. The core Thai law hasn't changed. Foreigners can't own land directly.
And the workaround using companies is now under scrutiny.
Yes, since 2024 especially, enforcement seems stricter, making it more complex and, well, riskier, according to the article. That's definitely made some potential villa buyers hesitate.
So the old way isn't as straightforward.
Seems not. And while the proposed 99-year lease could offer a path forward, the uncertainty around if or when that might become law adds to the current wait-and-see feeling for that specific part of the market.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting then. If getting freehold for villa is complicated right now, what can foreign buyers realistically do?
Right, that's where the alternatives become key. While the legal haze affects freehold villas, the source emphasizes there are clear, established options.
Such as?
Well, you can get villas on secure, long-term renewable leases. Often these are within those branded developments we mentioned, which come with management services anyway.
Okay, leases. And what about apartments or condos?
Condominiums are the simplest route. Foreigners can own condos freehold under Thai law, and the source points out condos make up a really significant portion of the housing supply in Phuket.
Ah, so there are legally clear paths to ownership.
Definitely. Through leases and freehold condos. They do note that company structures are still being used for some high-end luxury villas, but suggest the trend is towards simpler, cleaner structures. Getting clarity on that 99-year lease idea is seen as important for the future of the villa market specifically, which does raise a question. How much will this ongoing legal uncertainty really dampen demand for villas long-term? And how well do things like condos and leases pick up the slack from different types of buyers?
Looking ahead, the article mentions big investors potentially playing a role.
Yeah, the idea is that larger investors, maybe private equity or institutional funds, might see the current situation to slow down potential price softening as a buying opportunity.
Stepping in when things look a bit cheaper.
Potentially. The source suggests this could help stabilize prices, maybe putting a floor under the market and limiting dips to perhaps around 10% overall in most areas, although individual spots could vary more.
So they could act as a buffer against steeper drops?
That's the thinking. And looking further out, there's a general sense of optimism in the article. They expect things to pick up, pointing towards maybe increased hotel occupancy by late 2026 during the high season as a sign of broader recovery.
And they circle back to Phuket's history of bouncing back.
Yes, they reiterate that resilience narrative, mentioning how it recovered after the tsunami, after the pandemic. It's presented as almost part of the island's DNA.
It sounds like the core message from Ocean Worldwide is Phuket property is really a long game.
Absolutely. They stress that repeatedly. It's generally not a market for quick flips. It's driven by that long-term lifestyle motive, people buying because they genuinely want to be there, use the property, retire, or have a secure base.
That long-term demand provides the foundation.
Exactly. That demand, plus the infrastructure and the international appeal, is why they frame it as fundamentally a safe bet for investors with a long horizon, even with global wobbles.
Interestingly, though, the source does mention some expats starting to look beyond Phuket.
They do touch on that. Apparently, the rising costs and the fact that it's getting, well, busier and more crowded is leading some affluent long-termers or potential buyers to check out other spots in Thailand.
So Phuket's not the only game in town anymore for lifestyle buyers.
It seems other places are gaining traction. They mention alternatives north of Phuket specifically.
Like where?
Places like Chiang Mai, different vibe, culture, climate. Hua Hin, established coastal town closer to Bangkok. And Khao Lak, quieter, more nature-focused. These cater to slightly different tastes and budgets, showing the Thai lifestyle market is diversifying.
So Phuket's own success and development might be, ironically, pushing some people to look elsewhere. It really highlights how the island is evolving.
That seems to be part of it. The article concludes by emphasizing this transformation of Phuket into a much more diverse lifestyle destination, not just for tourists, but for long-term residents, remote workers, retirees.
And its future depends on managing that growth.
Yes, on adapting to these changing demands, focusing on quality, sustainability, making it a place people truly want to live and work long-term, not just visit briefly.
Okay, so wrapping this up, our deep dive into Ocean Worldwide's perspective reveals a Phuket real estate market that's clearly in an interesting, complex phase. Prices are high, construction has been intense, and things have cooled off recently, suggesting a potential adjustment is happening or is likely.
But, as you said, the source builds a strong case for fundamental resilience. It's largely cash-based, draws international buyers, it's fueled by lifestyle choices, and it's got that increasingly strong infrastructure. These things set it apart from more speculative markets.
Right.
And while the legal side for villas is definitely murky right now, the availability of freehold condos and secure leases provides clear alternatives for many buyers.
So it looks like a market facing some changes, maybe some short-term headwinds, but resting on a pretty solid foundation because of its unique setup. Whether you're actually looking to buy your piece of paradise there or just keeping tabs on global property trends, Phuket is certainly one to watch.
Which leaves us with thought to ponder. As Phuket continues to evolve from that idyllic island escape into this major lifestyle hub, and as other places in Thailand step up as attractive alternatives, how does the island strike that balance? How does it manage growth and development without losing the unique charm and appeal that attracted those crucial lifestyle buyers in the first place? Can it grow without sacrificing its soul?
That is definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.